If you're about to give up on everything, if your prayers go unanswered and nothing else works, pay close attention. This video didn't find you by chance. There's an ancient message, attributed to the Egyptian god Thoth, that only appears to those who have reached their absolute limit. Legend says this message contains a single word, a command capable of making the universe obey your desires and completely changing your reality in 24 hours. I'm going to reveal what that word is and show you the true story of a man who, one day before being evicted, used this secret and saw the impossible happen. Stay with me, because what you're going to learn today isn't positive thinking. It's a power that has been hidden from you. If you feel you are ready for this change, comment now. I am ready to receive. What you're about to discover isn't about adding something new, but about removing the obstacle that blocks the flow of your life. This is the turning point, the moment you stop asking why doesn't anything work, and understand the real reason. The answer isn't in a new strategy, but in a fundamental course correction. From now on, we'll dismantle, piece by piece, the invisible prison you live in, starting with the civil war raging inside your mind. The real battlefield isn't in the outside world, but inside your head. It's a silent war waged between what you desire and what you believe. For every seed of desire you plant, your mind, like infertile soil, summons the weed of doubt, choking the seed before it can sprout. You claim, "I am prosperous," but the image of an overdue bill nullifies the command, keeping you in a cycle of frustration. This battle of wills drains your energy and neutralizes your intentions. It's like trying to steer a boat by rowing with the same force forward and backward. The effort is immense. Exhaustion overwhelms you, but the boat only spins in circles, leaving you exhausted and exactly where you started. As long as you remain in this conflict, the message you send to the universe is confused, a request that is immediately cancelled by fear. The universe doesn't judge. It merely mirrors the dominant vibration you emit. When your vibration is a mixture of desire and doubt, the result is stagnation. It's the experience of almost succeeding, of seeing an opportunity and missing it by a hair's breadth, only to be pulled back. Your external reality is an echo of this unresolved internal war. To win, you shouldn't fight doubt, but make it irrelevant. To do this, you need to understand who commands the enemy army. This force that sabotages your desires is not an external demon, but a silent guardian that lives within you. Its only mission is to protect you, even if that protection means keeping you trapped in the suffering you already know. It's time to meet your inner saboteur. This relentless force that sabotages your deepest desires is not a demon, a curse, or an external enemy. It is something far more personal and paradoxical. It is a silent guardian within you, a safety mechanism deeply programmed into your subconscious. The sole and primary mission of this guardian is not to make you happy, but to keep you safe. And for it, safe means familiar. It operates on a simple principle. What is known is safe. What is unknown is dangerous. And it will do everything to keep you within the boundaries of what it already knows. Now think about this. If constant struggle, financial scarcity, and relationship difficulties have become your norm for years, then that's the comfort zone your guardian will protect at all costs. For him, ease, abundance, and peace are strange, uncharted territory, and therefore potentially dangerous. Trying to assert a new reality of prosperity and joy is like telling a loyal guard dog, who has protected the house for years, that a complete stranger standing at the door is actually the new owner of the house. His immediate instinct is to bark, growl, and protect the familiar territory, even if that territory is a house on fire. This guardian doesn't understand the language of faith or imagination. He operates on the cold, unforgiving logic of the five senses. He needs to see to believe. He demands concrete proof. He constantly asks, "How will this happen? And where will this come from?" In the absence of a logical, step-by-step answer, he classifies your desire as a dangerous fantasy, an illusion that could lead you to even greater suffering. And at that moment, he redoubles his efforts to drag you back into the familiar suffering he already knows and knows how to manage. That's why, right after a moment of great inspiration or a firm decision to change, a wave of doubt and fear washes over you. It's your inner guardian kicking in, releasing stress hormones and bringing to the surface all the memories of past failures to convince you that it's safer not to try. It reminds you of the time you failed, the person who disappointed you, the opportunity that didn't work out. It does this not out of malice, but because of a survival program that believes is protecting you from another disappointment. This part of your mind is what the spiritual master Florence Nightingale called the carnal mind or carnal reasoning. It is the mind that only accepts evidence from the physical senses and rejects any truth that cannot be measured or proven in a laboratory. It is the voice of be realistic, of don't dream so big. And as long as you try to convince this part of your mind with logical arguments, you will always be at a disadvantage, because it will always have more evidence from the past to use against you than you have proof of the future you wish to create. The biggest mistake we make is trying to fight this guardian head-on. Trying to defeat it by force is a losing battle, because it is using your own energy against you. Every argument you use, it counters with a memory of pain. Every statement you make, it responds with proof of scarcity. It's an exhausting fight that only serves to reinforce the guardian's belief that change is, in fact, a terrible and dangerous struggle. You are trying to storm a fortress using the very weapons that built it. The solution, therefore, is not to fight. The solution is to circumvent. It is necessary to find a way to get past the guardian without him noticing, to deliver a message directly to the command center of his subconscious, a message that he cannot intercept, analyze, or sabotage. There is a secret to this, a powerful principle that echoes from the pyramids of Egypt to the temples of the East, a principle that teaches the art of ceasing to fight and, finally, beginning to win, not by force, but by intelligent surrender. There is a profound and powerful paradox, a truth that echoes from the inscriptions on the pyramids of Egypt to the teachings of Zen masters in the East. That which you fight against, you strengthen. Every time you strive to be positive or to believe more, you are actually sending a signal of doubt to the universe. The very tension you feel when trying to force a thought of abundance is proof that, deep down, you are operating from a belief in scarcity. You are trying to cover up fear with a thin layer of hope, and the universe always responds to the deepest vibration. True faith is not tension. It is relaxation. It is not a desperate effort. It is a calm and unwavering certainty. Imagine that your desire is a precious seed that you have just planted in fertile soil. Anxious mental effort, the need to constantly check if something is happening, is like digging up that seed every 5 minutes to see if it is growing yet. This act not only interrupts the natural and invisible process of gestation, but completely destroys it. You are killing your desire with your own impatience and lack of confidence. Ancient wisdom teaches us the path of non-resistance, a conscious surrender that is not defeat, but an act of supreme power. It is the intelligent detachment from the need to control how and when your desire will manifest. It is the absolute trust that the invisible intelligence of the universe, which orchestrates the movement of the planets and the growth of each leaf, knows exactly what it is doing. It is stopping fighting against the river of life, trying to row against the current. and finally learning to float, trusting that the intelligent current knows exactly where to take you. But how do you surrender when fear is screaming in your ears? How do you float when panic makes you desperately thrash about in the water? Surrender is not passivity. It's not sitting and doing nothing. It's an active act of transferring responsibility from your limited ego to the infinite wisdom of the universe. It's saying, with conviction, I did my part, which was to define what I want. Now, I entrust the execution to a power greater than myself, and I trust that the perfect solution is already on its way, even if I can't see it. This attitude completely disarms the inner guardian. When you stop worrying about the how, you take away its main weapon, which is logical doubt. The guardian cannot fight against trust. It has no arguments against relaxed faith. By adopting a posture of calm expectation, you shift your vibration from need to receptivity. You cease to be a beggar pleading for alms and become a host, preparing the house to receive an honored guest who has already confirmed their attendance. This shift in attitude is the essence of true magic and manifestation. It's the secret behind so-called miracles. It's not about forcing the world to give you what you want. It's about aligning yourself vibrationally with the reality you desire, so that it is attracted to you by natural law, not by effort. It's a state of being, not a state of doing. It's the difference between frantically chasing butterflies and becoming a blooming garden that attracts them effortlessly. But for this confidence to be more than just a beautiful theory, it needs to be tested in the fire of real life. It needs to be applied in a situation where logic dictates there is no way out, where despair is the only rational response. It is precisely in such a scenario, in a life or death situation, that an ordinary man, just hours away from losing everything, was forced to abandon the fight and, in that act of total surrender, found the key that would change his reality forever. Just 24 hours before being evicted from his apartment, a man named Arthur had reached the end of the line. He had exhausted all logical options. He had called all his friends, begged for advances, searched for desperate solutions, but every door had slammed in his face. The eviction notice on the table was no longer a threat. It was a sentence. At the bottom of his own abyss, with no more strength to fight or even to hope, he finally did the only thing left to him. He surrendered. Not a surrender of defeat, but of total exhaustion. And in that profound silence that followed the storm of panic, a name emerged from the depths of his memory, like an air bubble rising from the bottom of a lake. Florence. He didn't know much about her. She wasn't a famous guru with grand stages or best-selling books. Her name moved in whispers, shared only among those who had witnessed or experienced transformations that logic couldn't explain. She was a practitioner of truth, a woman who taught the invisible laws of the universe in a practical and direct way. Driven by an impulse he couldn't explain, Arthur gathered his last coins. They weren't enough to pay the rent, or even for a decent meal, but they were enough to take transportation to the address where Florence worked. He wasn't looking for a miracle or words of comfort. He was looking for instruction. He was so broken that his logical mind, which had led him to this situation, finally fell silent. He was ready to hear something new, something beyond his own failing understanding. This act of blind faith, of using one's last resources not to solve the problem logically, but to seek a higher wisdom, is the step that always precedes true transformation. It is the humble recognition that the maps you have been using no longer serve you, that your own intelligence has led you to a dead end. It is the moment when the student, having exhausted all their own answers, is truly ready to learn. And the universal law says that when the student is ready, the master appears. Whether in the figure of a woman in early 20th century New York, or in the timeless archetype of Thoth, the Egyptian god of wisdom, The same universal force presents itself to deliver the key when the seeker is genuinely receptive. The form doesn't matter. What matters is the readiness of the heart. Arthur, in his despair, had achieved this readiness. He had nothing left to lose, and this lack of attachment made him a perfect vessel to receive a truth that would restructure his reality from its very foundations. He didn't know, as he made his way to meet Florence, that his desperate journey wasn't the end, but the beginning. He believed he was going to find a solution to his financial problem, but he was actually on his way to receive a diagnosis. A spiritual diagnosis so precise that it would not only solve his immediate problem, but would give him the power to never again be a victim of circumstances. His crisis was not a punishment, but the initiation that qualified him to receive transformative knowledge. Arthur's journey represents the journey each of us takes when we reach our breaking point. It's proof that the darkest point of the night is, in fact, the moment that precedes dawn. He was about to discover that his problem wasn't what he thought it was. The lack of money was merely the visible symptom of a much deeper and invisible cause. And the healing he was about to receive wouldn't come in the form of money, but in the form of an understanding that would make him a master of his own energy, and consequently, of his own life. Upon arriving before Florence, Arthur, his voice choked with despair, poured out his long and painful history of failures. He recounted each frustrated attempt, each closed door, each crushed hope, expecting perhaps a few words of compassion or some practical financial advice. Instead, what he received was a diagnosis, a cold, clinical, and precise diagnosis, like the blade of a scalpel, that completely ignored the story he told and went straight to the root of the problem, a root he himself was unaware of. Florence didn't just hear Arthur's words, she felt the vibration behind them. She didn't see a man with a money problem. She saw a consciousness waging a civil war. She realized that the fundamental problem wasn't a lack of resources in the outside world, but the incessant battle within Arthur's mind. His conscious desire for abundance was being systematically annihilated by a deeply ingrained, subconscious belief in scarcity, struggle, and failure. He was trying to drive with one foot on the accelerator and the other on the brake. The universe, she explained with disconcerting calm, doesn't respond to our pleas, our desires, or our efforts. It responds with mathematical precision to the dominant state of our consciousness. Arthur's positive affirmations were like seeds from a rare and expensive apple tree being thrown onto a concrete slab. The quality of the seed didn't matter. The soil was completely unsuitable. Every time he repeated to himself, "I am prosperous," his subconscious, fueled by years of worry and experiences of lack, screamed back with 1,000 times greater force, "No, you are not, and you know it." And it was this silent cry, this vibration of doubt and disbelief, that the universe was faithfully obeying and reflecting back to him in the form of more bills, more closed doors, and more despair. He was trying to paint a masterpiece, a new picture of his life, but he was trying to paint it on a canvas that was already completely dirty, covered with layers and layers of old paint of fear, anxiety, and self-sabotage. The new paint simply couldn't adhere. The old image always showed through. The solution, therefore, was not to paint harder, use more expensive paint, or try a new painting technique. The solution was to find a way to cleanse the canvas first. It was necessary to neutralize the subconscious belief that was sabotaging the entire process. But how to do that? How to cleanse a program that has been reinforced by a lifetime of evidence? Trying to fight it head-on, as we have seen, would only strengthen it. A different approach was needed, a strategy that did not directly conflict with the powerful guardian of doubt. Florence revealed that the subconscious mind, though powerful, has a weakness, It does not reason. It accepts as truth what is presented to it with feeling and conviction, without questioning. The challenge was to find a way to bypass the logical and analytical mind, the guardian that questions everything, to implant a new truth directly into the subconscious. A type of communication was needed that the rational mind could not decode, debate, or reject. A communication that spoke the language of feeling and vibration, not that of logic. And for that, there was a tool. A tool as old as language itself, but whose power has been forgotten by most. It wasn't a long, complex statement that would give the guardian multiple points to attack. It was something much simpler, more direct, and impenetrable. It was a single word. A word that, when used correctly, would act as a master command, shutting down the logical mind's defense system and opening a direct path to the creative power of the universe. To circumvent the fierce resistance of the guardian of doubt, Florence revealed to Arthur the game-changing secret. It was necessary to use a word that the intellect could not combat, a word that did not describe the process of how the problem would be solved, for that would give the logical mind ammunition to doubt. Instead, a word was needed that declared the final result as an accomplished fact, an absolute and non-negotiable truth. A word that acted as a direct and sovereign command to universal power, a sacred sound that, like the ancient hieroglyphs of Thoth, contained within itself the power of creation itself. The word she revealed with powerful simplicity was impungible, a term that Arthur's logical, everyday mind rarely, if ever, used. And that was the key. Because it was an uncommon word, it had no logical opposite or pre-programmed negative association in his subconscious. His mind had no file of invincible failures to use against him. The word was virgin territory, a blank canvas upon which a new reality could be painted without the interference of old programming. Unassailable. The meaning is absolute, a position, a fortress that cannot be conquered, defeated, taken by force, or invaded. It is the declaration of a complete, final, and unquestionable spiritual victory. By declaring his financial situation, or any other problem, as unassailable, Arthur was not giving his logical mind any concrete detail to cling to in order to generate doubt. He was not saying the money will arrive tomorrow from such a source, which would allow the mind to ask, what if it doesn't arrive? He was making a statement of status. He was elevating the problem from the horizontal plane of hows and whens to the vertical plane of what is. He was taking the situation off the battlefield of human logic and handing it over to the infinite power of the universe, which needs no visible or logical paths to operate. It was like signing a royal decree. The king doesn't worry about how his order will be executed by the servants. He simply declares it as law, trusting that the mechanisms of the kingdom will put it into practice. The impregnable word was his decree. This strategy bypasses the guardian because it doesn't engage in debate with him. When the thought of fear arose, saying, "But you'll be evicted tomorrow," the response wasn't an argument like, "No, I won't, because something good will happen." The response was simply the calm and firm statement, "My divine provision is impregnable." This statement doesn't deny the apparent fact, the eviction notice, but imposes a higher truth upon it. It's like saying, "I see this fact, but it's irrelevant in the face of the higher law I'm invoking now." The word acted as a vibrational shield. It didn't eliminate fearful thoughts, but it prevented them from penetrating your center of power, your feeling. The thoughts could scream from outside the fortress, but they could no longer invade it. The word created a force field of certainty, and it was this vibration of certainty, not the absence of fear, that the universe would begin to mirror. It was the key to changing the soil of your consciousness from concrete to fertile ground, preparing it for the manifestation that was already waiting to happen. Florence explained that this was not a mental trick, but the application of a precise law, the law that consciousness is the only reality. By changing his consciousness about the problem, from hopeless to insurmountable, he was, in practice, changing the problem itself. He was rewriting reality at its most fundamental level. But for this magic word to work, it wasn't enough to just think it. It needed to be activated through an exact protocol, a ritual of faith that would anchor this new truth in the physical world. The word was the key, but a key needs to be used in the right lock. Florence didn't just give Arthur the theory. She handed him a precise protocol, a ritual of power to be performed not in a safe place, but at the epicenter of his fear, the apartment he was about to lose. The first instruction was an act of symbolic defiance, simple but profoundly powerful. He was to take a piece of paper, write the word "inexpugnable" in large, legible letters, and physically place it on the eviction notice that was on his desk, the materialization of his greatest fear. This was not an act of positive thinking or denial of reality. It was an act of spiritual mastery. It was the conscious declaration that there is a higher law that can override the laws of the material world. It was placing the decree of the unseen over the sentence of the visible. In doing so, Arthur was unknowingly mirroring the ancient practice of Egyptian priests, who used hieroglyphs and sacred symbols to inscribe a desired reality over an undesired situation. Believing that the symbol contained the power to reorder the physical world to align with the divine truth it represented. On one side of the table was the cold, hard fact of the material world, a piece of paper with a court order representing logic, scarcity, and failure. On the other side, superimposed on it, was the burning truth of the spiritual realm, a single word representing power, sufficiency, and absolute victory. This was Arthur's first act of conscious defiance against the tyranny of circumstances. It was the precise moment when he stopped being a reactive victim of his problem and began to position himself as the commander of the solution, shifting his posture from defense to attack. This symbolic act served as an anchor. He transferred the abstract idea of the word to the physical world, making it real to his senses. Now, every time his eyes saw the eviction notice, they would be forced to see first the word that negated it. It was a visual reprogramming, a constant reminder that he had chosen to operate under a new jurisdiction, that of spiritual law. He was training his own perception to focus on the solution, not the problem, a crucial step in changing his dominant vibration, and consequently, yes, his point of attraction. Florence knew that faith needs action to solidify. Faith without works is dead. Not because God needs our works, but because we need them to convince our own subconscious. The act of writing and positioning the paper was Arthur's work. It was his physical contribution to the process, his yes to the universe, demonstrating that he was ready to receive the solution. He was transforming his apartment, the stage of his despair, into a sanctuary, an alchemical laboratory where the lead of fear would be transmuted into the gold of manifestation. This initial ritual prepared the ground for the true battle, which would not be fought in the outside world, but within himself, during the long hours of the night that would follow. The guardian of doubt had been caught off guard, outwitted by a word he could not process, but he would not give up easily. The night would be the trial by fire, the final test to see if Arthur could maintain his new position of power or if he would be dragged back into panic and disbelief. The ritual was the act of raising the fortress. The night would be the siege. The instruction was clear. He should not fight. He should not argue. He should not try to convince himself. He should only stand firm in his vibrational fortress. The stage was set. The decree had been issued and positioned. Now, Arthur needed to face the longest night of his life, a night in which peace would not be a goal to be achieved, but a weapon to be wielded against the fiercest attack of his own mind. The night that followed was the trial by fire, the ultimate test of his newfound resolve. As soon as darkness fell and the day's distractions ceased, the guardian of doubt, sensing it was losing control, launched its fiercest and most desperate attack. A torrent of thoughts bombarded Arthur's mind, each designed to drag him back into panic. This is ridiculous. You're wasting your time. What will you do tomorrow when the landlord arrives and you don't have the money? Do you really believe that a single word will save you from being thrown out on the street? Instead of fighting this avalanche of fear, as he always had, Arthur applied Florence's teaching. He didn't try to silence his thoughts. He didn't argue with them. He didn't try to force a feeling of optimism. He simply took a deep breath and, with a calmness he himself didn't understand where it came from, pronounced the word aloud in the silence of his room, not as a battle cry, but as a serene and powerful declaration, inexpugnable. He wasn't speaking to his thoughts. He was speaking to the universe, reaffirming his decree. The answer wasn't a flash of light or a divine voice, but something far more subtle and infinitely more powerful. The whirlwind of anxious thoughts suddenly lost its force. They didn't disappear, but they could no longer penetrate him. It was as if they were screaming from outside an impenetrable glass fortress. He could hear them, but he could no longer feel them. The word didn't destroy the fear. It rendered him powerless, creating a separation between him, the observer, and the storm of thoughts his mind produced. Throughout the night, each time a new wave of panic tried to rise, he repeated the process. He breathed. He pronounced the word. The repetition of the word became a rhythm, a mantra, a meditation that wove a vibrational force field around him. And then, the true miracle, the one that always precedes external manifestation, happened. The desperate anxiety, the tight knot in his stomach that had accompanied him for weeks, began to dissolve. It was not replaced by excited euphoria, but by a profound and inexplicable feeling of peace. It was a peace that surpasses all understanding. The peace of someone who has finally surrendered the battle to an invincible general. The peace of someone who knows, not with their mind, but with every cell of their body, that victory is already guaranteed, even if their physical senses show no evidence of it. This peace was not passivity. It was his greatest weapon. It was proof that his vibration had changed. He was no longer vibrating at the frequency of the problem, fear, scarcity, but at the frequency of the solution, peace, confidence, sufficiency. This inner shift was all the universe needed. By achieving this state of unconditional peace, Arthur became an empty vessel, ready to be filled. He stopped blocking the flow of the solution with his own resistance and anxiety. He had cleared the channel. He didn't know how the solution would come. And for the first time, he didn't care. He had done his part, which was to align his consciousness with the truth of abundance. And now he trusted that infinite intelligence would do its part. He finally fell asleep, not a restless sleep of worry, but a deep and peaceful sleep, the sleep of a man who, despite all outward appearances, knew he was safe. He had won the inner war. The battle in the outside world was now merely a formality. The peace he had achieved that night was not just a temporary relief. It was the magnetic force that, in the hours to come, would draw the perfect solution to his door. Arthur awoke with the first rays of morning sunlight. For a brief moment, the cold reality of the situation tried to impose itself, The habit of morning panic tried to take over. But something was different. The knot of panic in his stomach, which had been his constant companion for weeks, had completely disappeared. In its place, there was an expectant calm, a serenity that his logical mind could not comprehend. It was the tranquility of someone who knows that an important and much-awaited guest is about to arrive, and not the anxiety of someone expecting an executioner. He didn't rush to the window to see if a miracle had happened during the night. He didn't check his empty pockets in a last act of despair. Instead, he got up and went to make his coffee, moving with a slowness and serenity that were completely illogical for a man who, in a few hours, could be homeless. Every gesture was deliberate and peaceful. He had entered what Florence called God's time, a state of consciousness where human anxiety is replaced by divine trust. In spiritual consciousness, there is no such thing as too late. The infinite supply, governed by a perfect order like that of Mayat, the Egyptian goddess of cosmic balance, is not subject to our arbitrary deadlines. It always arrives at the exact moment, not a second before, not a second after. Often, it manifests itself at the last possible instant, not to torture us, but to seal the lesson of faith in an unforgettable way in the heart of the one who receives it. The pressure of the deadline serves to squeeze out the last drops of doubt. By shifting his inner vibration from fear to peace the previous night, Arthur had fundamentally changed his magnetic point of attraction. According to the universal law that like attracts like, fear and lack could no longer find him. His vibrational frequency no longer matched those experiences. He had tuned into a new radio station, that of solution and sufficiency. The universe, by law, could no longer deliver him rejection and humiliation. He was now a magnet for solution. He sat by the window, drinking his coffee, not watching the street anxiously, but simply appreciating the morning light. He wasn't trying to have faith. He was in a state of faith. The peace he felt wasn't an effort, but the natural consequence of his surrender the previous night. He had surrendered the problem and, with it, the burden of solving it. His only task now was to maintain that state of peace, to remain in that frequency of receptivity, and not allow the old pattern of panic to throw him off balance. This calmness wasn't a denial of the problem. It was the silent affirmation that the solution already existed in the invisible realm and was on its way to the visible. It was the vibration that told the universe, "I'm ready. The channel is open. Send it." He didn't know what form the solution would take, whether it would be a check, a new job, or a brilliant idea, and that didn't matter. The beauty of surrender is that it frees us from the need to know how, allowing the infinite creativity of the universe to surprise us with a solution far better than we could have imagined. And while he remained in this state of sovereign tranquility, infinite intelligence, which had already received his new vibrational signal, was moving the pieces on the chessboard of life. It was orchestrating events, inspiring people, and aligning circumstances to create the perfect path for the solution to reach him. The universe was preparing the knock on the door that would change absolutely everything. In the middle of that quiet morning, a firm, confident knock sounded at the door. It wasn't the hesitant knock of a postman, nor the impatient knock of the landlord. Arthur's heart didn't race with panic, as it would have the day before. He rose with the same calm that had accompanied him since dawn and opened the door. Before him was not the angry face he expected, but a prosperous-looking stranger, a well-dressed man who looked at him with friendly curiosity. The man introduced himself as an artist. He explained, somewhat awkwardly, that he was there driven by a sudden and inexplicable surge of nostalgia. That building, and specifically that apartment, had been where he lived in his youth, at the beginning of his career. It was there, in that very space, that he had painted the works that launched him to success. He simply felt an overwhelming urge to revisit the place he considered his lucky charm, the cradle of his fortune. After a brief and pleasant conversation, during which Arthur simply listened, maintaining his inner peace, the artist got straight to the point. He said that upon entering the building, he felt such a strong connection to the place that a bold idea occurred to him. He wanted to rent that apartment again, not to live in it, but to use it as a sentimental studio, a place to reconnect with his original inspiration. And he was willing to compensate Arthur generously to terminate the contract and move in immediately, without any red tape. Then, the artist mentioned a figure. The amount he offered wasn't a random or rounded number. When Arthur heard it, he felt time stop. The figure was the exact amount, penny for penny, of his entire debt to the landlord. But it didn't stop there. There was an additional amount, a surplus that was enough to cover the deposit and the first month's rent of a new place, and still leave him with a small amount of capital to restart his life without the immediate pressure of survival. Not a dollar more, not a dollar less than he needed. It was the perfect answer. Not just any solution, but a solution tailor-made by infinite intelligence, with a precision that defied coincidence. It was delivered through a completely unexpected human channel. A man who, following his own inspired impulse, his own intuition, became an agent of the divine plan, a messenger of abundance, without even being aware of the crucial role he was playing in Arthur's life. He thought he was following a whim, but he was obeying a universal order. Arthur accepted the offer, the check was signed, and the stranger left, leaving behind not only the financial solution, but irrefutable proof that the invisible laws were real. That piece of paper in his hand was the materialization of a shift in consciousness. It was proof that, by changing his internal vibration, he had forced external reality to reconfigure itself to match this new frequency. The problem had not been solved in the traditional sense. It had been completely dissolved. With the check in hand, Arthur felt a wave of reverence wash over him. The money was almost secondary. What astonished him was the perfection of the mechanism, the synchronicity, the precision, the elegance of the solution. He realized that the universe was not a chaotic battlefield, but an ordered and responsive system. He had learned to speak the language of this system, and the system had responded. Now, he awaited the arrival of the owner, not with fear, but with the serenity of one who holds the power. With the check in his hands, Arthur felt time stand still for an instant. That piece of paper wasn't just money. It was the physical manifestation of a word spoken with faith. It was tangible proof, something he could touch and see, that the invisible laws of the universe are as real, if not more so, than the law of gravity. He looked at the check and saw the impregnable word reflected in it. The fortress he had built in his consciousness the night before had materialized as financial security in his hands that morning. His problem had not been solved in the way his logical mind could conceive. He didn't win the lottery, he didn't receive an unexpected inheritance, nor did a friend change his mind and lend him the money. The problem was dissolved. It was removed from his reality by the intervention of a higher law, just as light, upon entering a room, does not fight against the darkness, but simply dissolves it with its presence. The vibration of peace and sufficiency that he achieved dissolved the reality of lack and fear. When the landlord finally arrived later that day, he found a completely transformed man. Instead of the desperate and cowardly tenant he expected to find, he encountered a calm, dignified man with a light in his eyes. Arthur, with an almost disarming serenity, simply handed over the check that covered the entire debt. The landlord was speechless, unable to comprehend the sudden and complete turnaround in the situation. but could do nothing but accept the payment. At that moment, by paying off his debt, Arthur gained something infinitely more valuable than the money to pay the rent. He gained the practical, experiential, and unwavering knowledge that he was not a victim of circumstances. He realized, at a cellular level, that he was the master of his reality, the co-creator of his life experience. He understood that he possessed within himself a power capable of reversing any situation, no matter how impossible it seemed, simply by aligning his consciousness with spiritual truth. The lesson was sealed in his soul. The lack of money had never been the real problem. It was merely the fire alarm sounding to alert him that his conscience was ablaze with the fire of fear and belief in limitation. By extinguishing the inner fire with the peace of confidence, the external alarm naturally fell silent. He learned that the outside world is just a mirror, and that trying to change the reflection without changing the original object is an exercise in futility and frustration. He packed his few belongings, not with the sadness of someone being evicted, but with the joy of someone moving into a new and broader life. Each object he packed was a reminder of his former awareness of limitation, and he bid it farewell with gratitude for the lesson it had taught him. He wasn't just leaving an apartment. He was leaving behind a version of himself, the version that saw itself as small, powerless, and subject to the tides of chance. Before leaving for his new life, he felt an urge to return to Florence's studio. He no longer needed help, but felt a deep need to share the story, to close the circle. He needed to understand not only that the system worked, but why it worked so perfectly. He wanted to receive the masterful lesson behind the miracle, the understanding that would ensure he could apply this principle to all areas of his life forever. Upon returning to Florence's studio, Arthur was no longer the broken and desperate man who had arrived the previous day. He walked with a different posture, his eyes shining with a new understanding. He recounted the story in detail, not as someone narrating a stroke of luck, but as a scientist reporting the successful results of an experiment. Florence listened with a serene smile, showing no surprise whatsoever. To her, this was not an anomalous miracle. It was the natural, orderly, and predictable workings of divine law. The artist, she explained, didn't appear by chance or out of a mere whim of nostalgia. He was what she called an agent of the divine channel. The infinite mind, the universal intelligence, knows all possible connections between all people, places, and things. It knows exactly who needs an apartment and who needs money, who has a question and who has the answer. It is the great cosmic logistics center, always seeking to connect need with provision. However, this connection can only be made when the channel is clear. While Arthur was vibrating in fear, doubt, and resistance, he was blocking his own channel. The solution, the artist, already existed, was already available, but couldn't reach him because their frequencies were incompatible. It was like trying to listen to an AM radio station with the radio tuned to FM. Once Arthur, through surrender and the word of power, purified his consciousness and shifted his vibration to peace and receptivity, he cleared the channel. At that precise moment, the infinite mind activated the perfect person, place, and condition to deliver the good that already belonged to it on the invisible plane. It sent an impulse of inspiration to the artist, who felt it as a sudden urge to revisit the past. The artist, following his intuition, became the messenger, the deliverer of the package that Arthur had finally become ready to receive. Synchronicity is not a coincidence. It is the hallmark of divine intelligence in action. And here, Florence revealed the most profound lesson, the same one that Thoth, the scribe of the gods, inscribed on the pillars of knowledge so that humanity would never forget. The work of humankind is not to find the solution, It is not to devise the plan, manipulate the circumstances, or discover the how. Trying to do this with our limited minds is like trying to empty the ocean with an eyedropper. It is an arrogance that only generates frustration and puts us on the path to universal intelligence. The only true task of humankind is to purify its own consciousness. Our only job is to remove the internal blockages of fear, doubt, resentment, and guilt that impede the flow of the solution that is already prepared. By doing this, by focusing solely on our inner state, we become a powerful magnet for the solution that already exists, merely awaiting the moment of our receptivity to materialize in the physical world. We do not create the solution, we allow it to find us. This understanding set Arthur free forever. He realized he didn't need to be intelligent, rich, or well-connected to succeed. He only needed to be a clear channel. He understood that power lay not in fighting the world, but in managing his own inner state. With this master key in hand, he knew he could face any future challenge. Thoth's message, delivered through Florence, was now his. And now, that same message, with its practical protocol, is his to use. This message from Thoth, delivered through the ages and tested in the fire of Arthur's experience, is now yours to use. Knowledge has no power until it is applied. The word inexpunishable is your tool, your sword, and your shield. The first step is to clearly identify the area of your life where anxiety, fear, and feelings of inadequacy reside most strongly. It could be your financial situation, your health, a relationship, your career. Look at the lion that frightens you most right now. Once you have identified the challenge, the application is counterintuitive. Instead of stating what you want, e.g., I want more money, which may generate resistance and the question how, you will simply declare the current state of that area of your life as unassailable. You will impose a higher truth over the apparent condition. If it is a financial challenge, your statement, spoken calmly and firmly, is, my divine supply, coming from God, is unassailable. If it's a health problem, your statement is, my divine health, my perfect vitality, is unassailable. If it's a conflict in a relationship, yet your statement is, divine harmony and love in this situation are unassailable. Feel the fundamental difference in vibration. A traditional affirmation is a plea, a request, a future goal stemming from lack. This statement is a decree, an affirmation of a present and eternal truth stemming from power. You are not asking, you are commanding. Every time a thought of fear, doubt, or panic arises in your mind, don't fight it. Don't argue with it. Don't try to convince yourself otherwise. Remember, fighting it only strengthens it. Simply observe the thought, acknowledge its presence without identifying with it. And then, calmly and firmly, repeat your declaration of power. Use the word as a vibrational shield that prevents negativity from penetrating your emotional field. The word is your focal point, the anchor that keeps you firm amidst the storm. And here is the most important part, the step that solidifies the whole process. Act as if victory is already assured. Continue your day with the serene confidence of someone who has already received the good news, even if it hasn't yet manifested physically. Move with the calmness of Arthur preparing his coffee, this acting as if it's not a charade. It's a vibrational alignment. It's the demonstration to the universe that you trust in your promise. Faith is proven by your serenity in the face of adversity. Your only task, from now on, is to keep your consciousness anchored in the peace that comes from this certainty. Monitor your feelings. If anxiety returns, don't blame yourself. Just gently return to your center, breathe, and repeat your decree. You are the guardian of your own vibration. Protect your inner peace as you would your most valuable possession, because it is from this peace, this frequency of trust, that infinite intelligence can orchestrate and deliver the perfect solution for you. Do not underestimate the simplicity of this method. The most powerful laws of the universe are always simple. You have been given a master key capable of unlocking any door. Power lies not in complexity, but in the consistent application of a true principle. Take this tool now. Choose your area of focus. Formulate your decree with the word unassailable and begin to practice. The universe is ready to obey. It was just waiting for you to give the correct order. The power that completely transformed Arthur's reality in less than 24 hours wasn't in Florence. It wasn't in the word itself, as if it were a magic spell. And it wasn't in a distant, separate God who decided to intervene out of pity. The power resided, and always has resided, in Arthur's own consciousness, the moment he aligned it with universal truth. His consciousness is, and always will be, the only reality. That which you hold within it with conviction and feeling must by immutable law, manifest in your world. For too long, perhaps for your entire life, we have allowed fear, doubt, and memories of past failures to occupy this sacred space in our consciousness. We treated them as if they were the true owners of the house, while we, the true master, cowered in a corner, afraid. Today, you have received the key to reclaim this territory, to expel the invaders, and to restore your throne as the sole ruling power in your personal universe. You have received the authority to determine what is law in your world. The word impregnable is more than a tool. It is a constant reminder of your true nature. You are not a fragile human being, a victim of circumstances, floating in a cold and indifferent universe. You are a powerful spiritual being, temporarily focused on a physical experience, and your divine inheritance is limitless abundance, overflowing joy, and unshakable peace. Anything in your life that contradicts this is a shadow, a powerless illusion unless you empower it with your fear and your attention. Don't let this knowledge be just another interesting story you heard. Don't file it away in your mind as a curious spiritual theory. Knowledge without application is useless. Take it. Apply it with the seriousness of a scientist and the faith of a child. Choose your battle. Raise your shield. And prepare to see doors that were jammed begin to open. Prepare for your own unexpected visits, for your own checks that arrive at the right time, for your own divinely orchestrated solutions. The universe is not testing you. It is not punishing you. It is not withholding good from you. It is simply awaiting your orders. It is a perfect and impersonal servant who can do nothing until you, the master, give a clear, firm command, free from contradictions. As long as you send confused orders, a mixture of desire and fear, it can only deliver a confused reality, a mixture of success and failure. Today you learn to give a clear order. The same power that was available to Arthur is available to you, here and now, at this very moment. It doesn't discriminate. It doesn't depend on your history, your education, or your bank account. It depends only on your ability to choose a new thought, to align yourself with a new truth, and to maintain that vibration despite appearances. The choice is yours. The tool is in your hands. The universe is listening attentively, awaiting your decree. Use it. If you've made it this far, if this message resonated with your soul, know that it wasn't a coincidence. You are ready to hear it? To seal this new awareness, leave your mark in the comments with the phrase, "The universe obeys my command." And if you feel this content has been valuable and you want to help this channel grow more directly, there's an option to contribute in the first pinned comment. Any help you can give is very important to me so I can continue spreading more messages like this. But understand that just the fact that you've made it to the end already helps immensely. If you can, share this video with someone who also needs to hear this. And before you leave, don't go away yet. I've prepared a special video to delve deeper into this journey. Click on the video that's currently playing on the screen, and let's meet there.